the smoky twilight of Appalachia, Mark and Emily Turner navigated the winding forest road, their 2-year-old son, Liam, fast asleep in the back seat. It had been a long journey, and exhaustion clung to Mark like the heavy mist settling over the trees. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white against the dark interior. Rain began as a faint patter, then grew to torrents, each droplet pounding like tiny drums on the roof. Emily placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Maybe we should stop for the night," she suggested, her voice barely a whisper. "We're almost there," Mark replied, his voice steady but tense. The road before them twisted through the looming pines, shadows flickering like silent watchers along their path. Liam, innocent and blissfully unaware, slept peacefully, his small chest rising and falling with each gentle breath. They rounded a sharp bend when the world shifted in an instant. Tires skidded on a slick patch of asphalt, and the SUV spun out of control, veering off the narrow road. Emily's gasp filled the air, followed by a jarring crash as the car hurtled down the embankment. Glass shattered, metal groaned, and then silence. The wrecked vehicle lay at the foot of a steep hill, crumpled against a tree. Inside, Mark and Emily were slumped, unconscious, blood trickling from Mark's forehead and a deep gash on Emily's arm. The dense forest around them was eerily quiet, as if holding its breath. A faint whimper broke the silence, Liam's soft, frightened cry. Still strapped in his car seat, he opened his eyes, his tiny voice filled with confusion. But no one came. No headlights appeared on the darkened road, no footsteps through the damp underbrush. His cries grew louder, piercing the stillness of the forest. And then something stirred in the shadows. A colossal grizzly bear, its massive frame cloaked in mist, emerged from the darkness, drawn to the scent of blood and the sound of Liam's cries. The creature lumbered toward the wreck with cautious steps, amber eyes glinting in the dim light. Peering into the wreckage, the bear nudged open the car door, reaching in to lift the car seat, carefully cradling Liam within its powerful jaws. In one fluid motion, the bear turned, melting back into the forest, leaving the crash site behind. The night reclaimed its silence, the forest seeming to swallow every trace of what had just occurred. As dawn crept over the Appalachian Mountains, its pale light filtered through the dense canopy, casting a muted glow on a secluded cave deep in the woods. The bear had carried Liam through the night, navigating rough terrain with instinctive care. Now, in this hidden sanctuary, the bear gently placed the car seat down on a soft bed of moss. Liam's sleepy eyes fluttered open, taking in the strange surroundings with a child's natural curiosity rather than fear. The enormous creature settled nearby, watching Liam intently. The toddler looked at the bear, his innocent gaze meeting the creature's powerful yet calm eyes. There was no fear in him, only fascination. Liam reached out, tiny fingers brushing the bear's thick, warm fur. To any onlooker, the sight would have been miraculous. A fragile child touching a wild beast with absolute trust, and the bear, usually a creature of raw strength and untamed power, responding with surprising gentleness. Meanwhile, news of the Turners' accident spread like wildfire in Mountain View. Search parties combed the area, finding the mangled remains of the SUV, but no sign of Liam. The people of Mountain View, who knew the woods well, were unsettled by the bear tracks near the crash site. Whispers of old legends surfaced, tales of spirit bears that watched over the lost and vulnerable. But as the search wore on, hope began to fade. And the reality of the wilderness became stark and cold. In the quiet of the cave, however, a bond was forming. Liam, now unstrapped from his seat by the bear's careful nudges, moved around clumsily, occasionally touching the bear as if he found comfort in its presence. His small hands patted the bear's nose and brushed against its fur. The bear, for its part, emitted soft rumbles, sounds that seemed to soothe the boy, like a lullaby made from the deep rhythm of the wilderness itself. As the hours passed, Liam began to mimic the bear's gentle sounds, creating a strange language of soft grunts and coos. The two communicated without words, as if they belonged to a world that understood more through feeling than language. They were an unlikely pair, a lost child and a grizzly bear, nestled in the dimness of the forest, bound by a shared vulnerability and an instinct to survive. Back in town, a tracker named Lucas Reed listened intently as searchers discussed the bear tracks and strange details surrounding Liam's disappearance. He had heard stories of guardian spirits in these mountains, protectors who roamed the wild in search of lost souls. As he prepared to enter the woods, Lucas felt a shiver of both fear and awe, sensing that this search would lead him far beyond what he could explain. In the heart of the forest, Liam and his guardian remained hidden, forging a bond that defied nature itself, a bond that would soon captivate everyone who dared to believe in its wonder. The sun rose on the third day of the search, casting a muted glow over Mountain View. The forest loomed in shadows, dense and unyielding, as search teams combed through the underbrush, calling Liam's name into the quiet morning. Among the searchers was Lucas Reed, an experienced tracker who knew these woods like the lines on his weathered hands. With each step, Lucas was drawn deeper into the trees, following faint clues that seemed to pull him toward something beyond his understanding. The bear tracks near the crash site troubled him. They weren't erratic or rushed, as one might expect from a bear drawn to a crash. They were deliberate, purposeful. Lucas paused, studying the impressions left by the massive paws, noting how they led away from the crash, as if guiding him. "What are you leading me to?" he murmured under his breath, his heart heavy with both fear and anticipation. Further into the forest, he stumbled upon an ancient grove of trees, their trunks scarred with symbols from a time long forgotten. Lucas ran his fingers over one of the carvings, a bear cradling a human child. It was a haunting image, one that brought to mind the stories his grandfather used to tell, tales of spirit bears that guarded lost souls in the wilderness. "Could it be?" he whispered, a chill running down his spine. In that moment, he felt as if he were not alone in these woods, as if the forest itself were watching him. Meanwhile, deep within the hidden cave, Liam had become more than just a guest. He was a companion to the bear. Over the past days, they had developed a silent language. Liam watched the bear forage for berries, and he imitated its movements, picking up leaves and inspecting them with curious fingers. They ate side by side, a wild and beautiful picture of two beings who, despite every natural barrier, had found a way to exist together. In Mountain View, Emily clung to hope, refusing to believe that her son was lost. Her heart told her that Liam was alive, and each night she whispered his name, believing he could somehow hear her. She couldn't shake the feeling that her boy was in the care of something, or someone, beyond her comprehension. Lucas pressed deeper into the woods, driven by a strange certainty that he was getting closer. Each broken twig, each whisper of movement, felt like breadcrumbs leading him toward a truth he wasn't sure he was ready to face. His radio crackled to life, snapping him back to reality. "Lucas, we've got something near the old cave system," a voice reported, urgent and excited. His heart pounded as he made his way toward the site, following an unspoken promise that he was close to uncovering something miraculous. As he approached the hidden caves, Lucas sensed that he was standing on the threshold of a mystery, one that would either change everything he knew about these mountains or confirm the impossible tales of guardians who roamed the wild. Back in the cave, as night fell, Liam lay nestled beside his bear guardian, both of them breathing in rhythm. As the forest quieted around them, they seemed to blend into the wilderness, an inseparable part of its heartbeat, waiting for the world to discover the extraordinary bond between them. As dawn broke over the misty peaks, Lucas finally arrived at the mouth of the hidden cave. He paused, his breath catching, letting his eyes adjust to the dimness within. There, against the shadowed backdrop of the cave, he saw them, Liam, small and fragile, lying beside the hulking figure of the grizzly bear. The toddler's tiny hand rested against the bear's thick fur, a picture of trust and innocence that made Lucas's heart clench with awe and disbelief. Carefully, he reached for his radio, his voice steady but soft. "I've found him. Liam's alive, and he's not alone." Inside the cave, Liam began to stir. Blinking, he looked around, his gaze locking onto Lucas with curiosity but no fear. To Lucas's amazement, Liam glanced back at the bear, as if seeking reassurance from his protector before acknowledging the human presence. The bear lifted its head, amber eyes meeting Lucas's with an intensity that wasn't hostile, but rather a kind of understanding, a silent communication. Lucas didn't dare move. He watched, mesmerized, as the bear leaned forward, nudging Liam gently. Reluctantly, the child stood, his tiny legs wobbling as he took a few steps toward Lucas. As if sensing the boy's hesitation, the bear rumbled softly, a low, comforting sound that seemed to say goodbye. And with one last tender nudge, the bear guided Liam into Lucas's arms. Cradling Liam tightly, Lucas backed away from the cave, but he couldn't help glancing back. The bear sat in the cave's entrance, watching them leave, a silent, proud figure. In that moment, Lucas understood that he wasn't just looking at an animal, he was looking at a guardian, a creature who had defied its own instincts to protect a vulnerable child. When they emerged from the woods, Emily and Mark were waiting, faces streaked with tears, arms open wide. Emily fell to her knees, holding Liam close, her cries of relief echoing through the trees. Mark's arms wrapped around them both, and for a moment, the family was whole again, bound by gratitude and disbelief at the miracle they had witnessed. As they held their son, Liam squirmed slightly, looking back toward the forest. He pointed to the tree line, eyes wide with a mixture of longing and farewell. "Bear," he whispered, his small voice carrying a tenderness that made Emily's heart ache. She followed his gaze and saw nothing but shadowed woods, yet she knew, somewhere in the vast wilderness, the bear was watching, its duty fulfilled. Lucas placed a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder, his own eyes moist. "He's safe now," he murmured, but the words felt inadequate. What they had all just experienced was beyond safety. It was something sacred, a bond that defied explanation. The townspeople of Mountain View gathered, and word of the reunion spread like wildfire. People were captivated by the impossible story, whispers of awe and disbelief filling the air. No one could explain it, and yet in their hearts they knew it was true. A child and a bear had shared a bond, a gift from the heart of nature itself. In the days that followed, Emily and Mark knew they had to do something to honor the creature that had saved their son. And so a vision began to form, a sanctuary for the bear, a place where it could live free from harm, a living testament to the miraculous bond it had forged with their child. Weeks after the miraculous reunion, the people of Mountain View came together, inspired by the Turner's story. With help from conservationists and townsfolk alike, they created a sanctuary for the bear, now affectionately known as Guardian. Set within a stretch of untouched forest land, the sanctuary was meant to protect Guardian, honoring the extraordinary connection that had formed between a wild creature and a lost child. The sanctuary, aptly named Liam's Haven, would be a safe place where Guardian could roam freely and undisturbed. In the months that followed, Liam's visits to the sanctuary became routine, and each time he neared the edge of the enclosure, his face lit up with joy. He would press his small hand to the transparent barrier, eyes searching the forest for any sign as Guardian, his guardian. And almost as if in answer, the bear would emerge from the trees, watching Liam with the same protective gaze. The townspeople marveled, never quite able to understand how the two seemed to recognize each other, as if nothing had changed since the day the bear rescued Liam. Standing beside her son, Emily was amazed each time she saw Liam mimic the bear's grunts, the low sounds that they had somehow developed together. Guardian, now watched closely by conservationists, responded each time, echoing Liam's sounds with gentle, rumbling tones that resonated through the quiet woods. Dr. Alina Foster, an animal behaviorist who had come to study Guardian, observed these exchanges with wonder. "This bond," she told Emily one afternoon, "is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's as if they've created a language of their own." Meanwhile, the sanctuary began to attract attention beyond Mountain View. Scientists, conservationists, and journalists traveled from far and wide, intrigued by the tale of a wild bear that had nurtured a human child. Donations poured in, allowing the sanctuary to expand, transforming it into a place of learning and connection. Liam's Haven became a symbol of coexistence, a place where the boundary between humans and animals blurred, replaced by trust and mutual respect. But not everyone in Mountain View was pleased with the attention. A local rancher named Henry Grimes voiced his disapproval at a town meeting, calling the sanctuary an unnatural interference in the forest's natural order. "This is a wild bear," he argued, his voice sharp. "We're only inviting danger by keeping it so close." Some murmured agreement, but Emily stood firm, explaining that Guardian had saved her son's life. "This isn't just any bear," she insisted, her voice strong. "Guardian chose to protect Liam. This sanctuary honors that choice." One crisp autumn afternoon, Emily brought Liam to the sanctuary again. As they watched Guardian approach, Liam's face brightened, and he made his familiar grunting sounds, pressing his small hand against the barrier. Guardian responded with a deep rumble, a sound that seemed filled with warmth and recognition. In that moment, Emily knew that whatever criticisms they faced, they were doing the right thing. As word of Liam's Haven spread, the sanctuary became more than a safe space for Guardian. It became a beacon of hope, an example of what could happen when humans learn to listen to the wild, to honor the silent bonds that connected them to the world around them. And each time Liam and Guardian met, the townspeople felt a profound sense of wonder, as if witnessing a legend come to life, a child and a bear, bound by a love that defied nature itself. 10 years passed, and Mountain View transformed. Liam, once a vulnerable child in a grizzly bear's care, grew into a young man with a passion for wildlife conservation. Under his guidance, Liam's Haven became more than just a sanctuary for Guardian. It evolved into a world-renowned center for animal communication and conservation studies, drawing researchers and students from across the globe. Guardian's story had touched lives far and wide, sparking a movement toward understanding and respecting the delicate relationship between humans and the wild. Now 18, Liam stood tall at the edge of the sanctuary, his eyes scanning the forest with a quiet, mature intensity. A new generation of researchers surrounded him, eager to learn from the boy whose story had captivated the world. As he led the group on a tour, Liam stopped at a familiar clearing, a place where he and Guardian had once shared quiet moments of mutual trust. Guardian, now older and moving with a measured grace, approached with her cub by her side. The sight brought a wave of emotions over Liam, who had come to see her not just as a protector, but as an irreplaceable friend. Liam reached out, his hand hovering just above the barrier as Guardian watched him, her calm eyes mirroring his. Her cub, curious and full of life, trotted closer, sniffing the air in his direction. With a careful, respectful gesture, Liam pressed his hand gently against the transparent barrier, and to his astonishment, the cub placed its paw directly opposite his. It was a moment of understanding, one that seemed to transcend the years and the boundaries between species. Beside him, Dr. Alina Foster, now a respected leader in animal cognition research, watched with a mixture of pride and awe. "Liam," she whispered, "you've done something remarkable. Guardian's bond with you has reshaped everything we know about animal behavior. This sanctuary, It's a testament to what can happen when we choose compassion over fear. Mountain View had embraced the sanctuary fully, and even former critics, like rancher Henry Grimes, had come to see it as an irreplaceable part of the town. Henry, now a strong supporter of the sanctuary, stood among the crowd, nodding with quiet admiration as he watched Liam's interactions with Guardian and her cub. That evening, the sanctuary hosted a gathering to celebrate its 10th anniversary. Liam, along with his family and friends, stood together, sharing stories and memories of those first difficult days after the crash. Emily and Mark, overwhelmed with pride, watched their son, marveling at the path his life had taken. They knew that the bond between him and Guardian had set him on a journey that would last a lifetime. As the sun dipped below the mountains, casting the sanctuary in golden hues, Liam made his way to the edge of the enclosure for a final visit with Guardian. He knelt, meeting her eyes one last time. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with gratitude and reverence. He reached up to place his hand on the barrier, his heart swelling with an understanding that went beyond words. Guardian rumbled softly, her eyes meeting his with a calm wisdom. She seemed to know that this was a farewell, not forever, but for now. The bond they shared, built on trust, would remain in his heart as he continued to champion the cause they had unknowingly started together. As the stars appeared, casting a quiet glow over the sanctuary, Liam looked around, seeing not just a refuge for animals, but a symbol of hope for humans as well. The story of Guardian and a lost boy had turned into something far greater, a legacy that would inspire generations to come. In the years that followed, Liam carried the lessons of Liam's Haven to distant lands, dedicating his life to fostering bonds of respect and understanding between people and nature. And every time he looked back on that journey, he remembered the gentle giant who had once watched over him, carrying her spirit with him, as a reminder that sometimes, even the wildest creatures can show us the truest forms of kindness and love. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss any of our latest videos. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Thank you all for taking the time to watch, and see you in the next video.